At dawn, every candle in Ravensmere House had burned low. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled with the kind of silence that comes before ruin. In the east wing of the great estate, a maid stood in the Duke of Ravensmere's bedchamber, with both hands pressed to her chest, her face pale, her apron torn, and a silver locket clutched tightly in her fist. Her name was Isolde Fenwick, at least that was the name the household knew. A quiet maid, a plain maid. A girl with soft brown eyes, steady hands, and a talent for disappearing before anyone could ask where she had come from. But that morning she was not invisible. That morning she was discovered standing beside the Duke's unmade bed, and the Duchess Dowager screamed as if she had found a corpse. What is the meaning of this? The cry rang through the hallway. Within seconds, doors opened. Footmen came running. Maids gathered at the threshold. The housekeeper arrived breathless, still tying her keys to her waist. And behind them all, with her silver hair pinned like a crown and her black morning gowns sweeping the floor, stood Lady Octavia Vale, the Duke's aunt. Her eyes went from Isolde's torn apron to the rumpled sheets, then to the open drawer beside the Duke's writing desk. A slow smile touched her mouth. Not shock. Victory. Well, Lady Octavia said softly, this is unfortunate. Isolde turned quickly. It is not what it looks like. That was the worst possible thing to say. The servants exchanged glances. The Duchess Dowager, Lady Marceline, lifted one trembling hand to her throat. You dare speak? You were found in my son's private chamber before sunrise, dressed like a common thief, and you dare speak. I came because I heard someone inside, Isolde said. I was trying to. To what? Lady Octavia interrupted. Steal, seduce, search for secrets. The words struck the room like stones. Isolde's face tightened, but she did not cry. That made them hate her more. People forgave a trembling maid. They pitied a weeping one. But a maid who stood straight beneath accusation looked too much like a woman with dignity, and dignity was dangerous in a servant. The housekeeper, Mrs. Grafton, stepped forward, her face stricken. Isolde, child, tell them the truth. I am telling the truth. Lady Octavia laughed under her breath. You were found in his Grace's bedchamber, holding something you stole from his desk. Everyone looked at Isolde's hand, the silver locket. The Duchess Dowager's eyes widened. That belonged to my late husband. Isolde looked down at the locket as if it had burned her. No, she whispered. It belonged to someone else before him. Lady Octavia's face sharpened, only for a second. But Isolde saw it. Before she could speak again, heavy footsteps sounded in the corridor. The crowd parted, and the Duke of Ravensmere entered. Dorian Vane was not a man people forgot. He was 34, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark riding coat, still damp from the rain. His black hair was wind-tossed, his jaw shadowed from a sleepless night, and his eyes carried the tired coldness of a man who had learned too early that love was usually a trap. He stopped in the doorway. His gaze moved over the room, his mother, his aunt, the servants, the open drawer, the maid, the locket in her hand. For one moment he said nothing. That silence was worse than shouting. Lady Marceline rushed to him. Dorian, thank God you are here. This girl was discovered in your chamber, your private chamber, at dawn. The Duke's eyes remained on Isolde. She looked back at him, trying desperately to make him understand without speaking. But how could he? He did not know her, not truly. He knew only the maid who brought fresh linen, the maid who lowered her eyes when he passed, the maid who had once corrected the placement of a book on his library table, because, as she had quietly said, the rain will warp the page if it faces the window. He had remembered that. He did not know why. Lady Octavia stepped closer. Dorian, this must be handled immediately. If word spreads, the scandal will poison the entire house. "The scandal?" he asked quietly. "A maid in your bedchamber," she said. "Surely you understand what people will say." The servants lowered their faces. Isolde's fingers tightened around the locket. The Duke looked at her hand. "Give it to me." Isolde hesitated. Lady Octavia smiled. "There, you see? She refuses." The Duke's voice lowered. "Miss Fenwick." The use of Miss startled the room. Isolde looked up. There was something in his eyes. Not kindness, not trust, but warning. "Give it to me," his gaze said. Not because he believed her. Because danger had entered the room, and he knew it. Slowly, Isolde handed him the locket. The Duke opened it. Inside was a miniature portrait of a young woman with golden brown hair and small birthmark beneath her left eye. His face changed. It happened so quickly most people missed it, but Isolde did not. The Duke recognized the woman. His mother noticed too. "Dorian?" Lady Marceline whispered. He closed the locket. His aunt's gaze narrowed. The Duke turned to Isolde. "Why did you take this?" "I did not take it to keep it," she said. "I took it because someone came here before me. Someone was searching your desk. I followed them. They dropped it when they fled." "A convenient story," said Lady Octavia. "It is the truth. Then name the intruder." Isolde went silent. The Duke noticed. The room noticed. Lady Octavia's smile returned. "You cannot, can you?" Isolde looked at the Duke. She could name the intruder. But the name would destroy everything too soon. Because the person she had seen leaving the Duke's bedchamber was not a servant, not a thief, not a stranger. It was Lady Octavia herself. But no maid could accuse a noblewoman and survive. Lady Marceline's voice shook with fury. "Dorian, dismiss her at once. No worse, send for the magistrate." Isolde's heart dropped. The magistrate. A charge of theft from a duke's chamber would ruin her. A charge of impropriety would bury her. If Lady Octavia pressed the matter, Isolde would not only lose her position, she would lose the one chance she had come to Ravensmere House to find. The truth. The Duke said nothing. Lady Octavia pressed the knife deeper. "There is only one way to stop the servants from carrying this scandal to the village. The girl must be removed before breakfast, quietly, if possible, publicly, if necessary." "No," Isolde said. One word, too sharp. Every eye turned to her. Lady Marceline looked appalled. "No," Isolde swallowed. She had played the maid for 3 months, lowering her head, carrying trays, folding linen, listening at doors, searching old rooms when no one watched. But the locket had changed everything. She had seen the portrait inside. She knew now that the woman in the locket was not merely connected to Ravensmere House. She was the key. And if Isolde left now, she would never learn why her mother had died with the Duke's name on her lips. The Duke's voice cut through the room. "No one sends for the magistrate." Lady Marceline turned to him. "Dorian, no one leaves this room." Lady Octavia's expression tightened. "Dorian, be sensible. The girl has compromised herself and you. Every moment she remains here increases the danger." The Duke stared at his aunt. Then he did something no one expected. He walked to Isolde's side. Not toward his mother, not toward his aunt, toward the maid. He stood beside her as if she belonged there. Gasps rose from the servants. Lady Marceline went pale. "What are you doing?" Dorian looked around the room. His expression was unreadable. Then he said the words that would set all of Ravensmere House on fire. "There will be no scandal." Lady Octavia's eyes narrowed. "And how do you intend to prevent one?" The Duke took Isolde's hand. She nearly pulled away. His grip was firm, not cruel. A command and a shield at once. He looked at every face in the room. Then he said, "She is my wife." The world stopped. A maid dropped a candlestick. "Mrs." Grafton whispered. "Merciful heaven." Lady Marceline gripped the bedpost as if the floor had vanished beneath her. Lady Octavia did not move at all. Only her eyes changed. For the first time that morning she looked afraid. Isolde stared at Dorian, her heart hammered so violently she could barely breathe. "Wife? What was he doing?" The Duke did not look at her. He looked at the room. "You will all leave us." His mother's voice broke. "Dorian, have you gone mad?" "No, you cannot mean this. I do." Lady Octavia stepped forward. "A duke cannot simply declare a maid his wife because she was found in his chamber." Dorian's head turned slowly. "Are you questioning me in front of my servants?" That silenced her. For all her influence, for all her schemes, she was not the Duke. Not here, not in his house. His voice hardened. "Everyone out." One by one, the servants fled. Mrs. Grafton hesitated, looking at Isolde with worry, but the Duke's stare moved her too. Soon only 4 remained: Dorian, Isolde, Lady Marceline, Lady Octavia. The Duchess Dowager looked at her son with devastated confusion. "Tell me this is some strategy." "It is." The word escaped him before he could stop it. Isolde looked at him. Lady Marceline heard it too. Her face changed from horror to suspicion. Lady Octavia's voice became smooth. "Then perhaps we should all hear the strategy." "No," Dorian said. "You will leave." His aunt smiled faintly. "Careful, nephew. A secret marriage to a servant is not a small matter. People will ask questions. Parliament will ask questions. Your creditors will ask questions. The families who are preparing to offer their daughters to you will ask many questions. Let them. And when they demand proof..." Dorian looked down at Isolde. For the first time, uncertainty passed between them. Then he said, "They will have it." Isolde's breath caught. Lady Octavia's gaze sharpened. "What proof?" The Duke's answer was calm. "The marriage certificate." There was no certificate. Isolde knew it. Dorian knew it. Lady Octavia knew it too. But the Duke said it with such authority that the room bent around the lie. Lady Marceline stepped back. "My son," she whispered, "what have you done?" Dorian's jaw tightened. What should have been done long ago? That sentence changed the air. Lady Octavia heard something in it. A threat. She studied him carefully, then dipped her head. "As you wish, Your Grace." She turned to leave. But at the door, she paused. Her eyes moved to Isolde. "A wife is not made by a sentence." Then she smiled. "And a maid does not become a duchess without blood on the floor." The door closed behind her. Lady Marceline followed, trembling, leaving mother and son with a wound neither of them dared touch. At last, the chamber was silent. Dorian released Isolde's hand. She stepped back instantly. "What have you done? What did you do?" He countered. "I told the truth." "No, you hid the most important part," her chin lifted. "And you lied before half your household." "I saved you. You trapped me. I prevented my aunt from destroying you." "Why?" The question hung between them. Dorian looked at the locket in his hand. "Because this belonged to my father." "No," Isolde said softly. "It belonged to my mother." His gaze lifted. The room seemed to tilt. "Who was your mother?" Isolde's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Her name was Serena Whitlock." Dorian went completely still. The name struck him like a blow from the past. Serena Whitlock. He had not heard it in 15 years, but he remembered. A young woman laughing in the West Garden. A voice singing behind locked doors, his father shouting, his mother weeping. Then one winter morning, Serena had vanished from Ravensmere House, and everyone had been ordered never to speak her name again. The Duke's voice changed. "How do you know that name?" Isolde's eyes shone, but she did not cry. "Because she was my mother." Dorian stared at her. "That is impossible. That is what people say when the truth is inconvenient." "My father never." "Your father ruined her." The words landed hard. Dorian's face darkened. "Be careful." "I have been careful all my life." "Then continue." "No," Isolde said. "I came here as a maid because no one would let Serena Whitlock's daughter through the front door. I came because my mother died with one sentence on her lips." Dorian did not ask. But his eyes did. Isolde opened her hand. There, pressed into her palm, was a tiny folded scrap of paper. She gave it to him. The writing was faded, almost gone, but the words remained. Ravensmere knows. Find the blue room. Dorian read it twice. Then a third time. The blue room was sealed after my father died. Why? Because my mother ordered it. Then your mother knows something. His expression hardened. You will not accuse her. I am not accusing her. I am saying your house is full of locked rooms and dead women. That should concern you. For a moment, he almost smiled. Almost. Then a knock sounded at the door. Both of them turned. The voice outside belonged to Lady Octavia. Forgive me, Your Grace. One more thing. Dorian did not answer. His aunt continued through the door. If the girl is truly your wife, I assume she will join the family at breakfast. Isolde's stomach tightened. Dorian's face remained still. Lady Octavia's voice sweetened. After all, the household must meet their new duchess. Silence, then footsteps retreated. Isolde looked at Dorian. You cannot continue this. I must. For how long? Until I know why my aunt fears you. She fears what I know. No, Dorian said quietly. She fears what you are. Isolde frowned. What am I? He looked toward the sealed west wing. I believe you may be the reason my father died. And outside the bedchamber, hidden behind the doorframe, Lady Octavia smiled. Because the Duke had guessed too little, and far too late. By 8 o'clock, the entire estate knew the Maid was the Duke's wife. By 8:30, the village knew. By 9, a groom had already ridden toward London with a letter hidden beneath his coat. And by breakfast, Isolde Fenwick was seated at the Duchess's place. She had never felt so exposed in her life. The dining room at Ravensmere House was built to make people feel small. Its ceiling rose high above carved beams blackened by age. Portraits of dead dukes stared down from the walls. The table stretched beneath silver dishes, crystal bowls, and white roses arranged in vases like funeral offerings. Isolde sat beside Dorian in a borrowed gown of pale green silk. It did not fit her properly. The sleeves were too tight, the neckline too grand, the fabric too soft against hands accustomed to scrubbing floors and carrying coal. But the worst part was not the gown. It was the silence. Every person at the table was watching her, pretend to be something she was not. Lady Marceline sat across from her, pale and wounded, as if Isolde had personally stolen her son. Lady Octavia sat at the far end, calm and elegant, stirring her tea without drinking it. Beside her sat Lord Peregrine Vale, Octavia's son, a golden-haired gentleman with a lazy smile and eyes too clever to be harmless. He had arrived minutes before breakfast, claiming he had ridden overnight after hearing of Dorian's romantic surprise. No one believed him. Dorian sat beside Isolde, still as stone. His face revealed nothing, but under the table his hand rested close to his knife. That told Isolde enough. He expected danger. Lady Octavia broke the silence. My dear Isolde, forgive me. Should I call you Your Grace now, or are we all still pretending this is sensible? Isolde felt every eye move to her. Dorian's jaw flexed, but before he could speak, Isolde answered. Call me whatever helps you sleep, my lady. A spoon clattered. Lord Peregrine laughed. Not loudly, just enough to show interest. Lady Octavia's smile chilled. How refreshing. A duchess with kitchen wit. And an aunt with kitchen manners, Isolde replied. How comforting. I shall not feel alone. This time Lord Peregrine laughed properly. Lady Marceline looked horrified. Dorian turned his head slightly toward Isolde. She expected reprimand. Instead, she saw something strange in his eyes. Approval. Tiny, unwanted. But there. Lady Octavia set down her spoon. You are bold for a woman whose position depends entirely on one man's lie. The room froze. Dorian's voice cut in. Careful. Lady Octavia looked at him. I am merely asking what all England will ask. Where was the wedding? Who witnessed it? Why was your wife living as a maid in your own house? Dorian reached for his tea. His hand was steady. Because I wished it. Lady Marceline flinched. Dorian, please? No, he said softly. Let us have the conversation my aunt desires. Isolde looked at him. His tone had changed. He was not defending the lie anymore. He was building a trap. Dorian turned to Lady Octavia. You want details? I want truth. No, he said. You want weakness. Lady Octavia's eyes narrowed. He continued. The wedding was private. The witnesses are not in this house. The certificate is safe. My wife entered service here under my instruction because I suspected someone within Ravensmere was stealing from me. Lord Peregrine leaned back. Now he was no longer smiling. Lady Octavia's hand tightened around her cup. Isolde kept her face still, though her pulse raced. This was new. Dorian was not only protecting her. He was using the lie to hunt the real enemy. And did your wife find the thief? Lady Octavia asked. Dorian looked at Isolde. The entire table followed his gaze. For one dangerous second, the choice was hers. She could say nothing, or she could strike. Isolde lifted her chin. She found locked doors, missing letters, and a noble woman walking where no servant was permitted. Lady Octavia's expression did not change, but Lord Peregrine's did, a flicker, small but visible. Lady Marceline looked from Isolde to Octavia. What is she talking about? Desperation, Octavia said. A girl raised low will always reach upward by clawing at her betters. Isolde stood. The chair scraped sharply against the floor. Dorian turned toward her, but did not stop her. I was raised low, Isolde said, but my mother was not. Lady Octavia went very still. There it was. The name between them, Serena Whitlock. Isolde did not say it yet. She wanted Lady Octavia to fear it first. Lady Marceline's voice trembled. Your mother? Isolde looked at her. For the first time, she saw not a cold dowager, not a noble enemy, but a woman who had spent years surviving inside a house built by men's secrets. My mother once lived here. The dowager's face changed. Not confusion, recognition. Dorian saw it. Mother. Lady Marceline looked down at her plate. Many women lived here. Not many vanished, Isolde said. The room turned colder. Lady Octavia stood abruptly. I will not sit here while this impostor poisons breakfast with servant gossip. Dorian's voice stopped her. Sit down. She turned slowly. I beg your pardon. Sit down. For a moment, aunt and nephew stared at each other. Then Lady Octavia sat. But something in her had shifted. Her patience was thinning. That made her dangerous. Dorian looked at his mother. Tell me about Serena Whitlock. Lady Marceline closed her eyes. No, the word was small. Broken. Dorian softened slightly. Mother, no, she whispered. Do not bring the dead back to this table. Isolde's voice lowered. She is already here. Lady Marceline looked at her. Isolde reached beneath the borrowed gown and pulled out the silver locket. Dorian had returned it to her before breakfast, though neither of them had spoken of why. She opened it and placed it on the table. The miniature portrait faced the dowager. Lady Marceline stared. All colour left her face. Where did you get that? From my mother. No. Yes, no, the dowager whispered. But now it sounded like grief, not denial. Dorian leaned forward. You knew her. Lady Marceline's eyes filled. I loved her. The room went silent. Even Lady Octavia did not move. Isolde's throat tightened. All her life, her mother had been a mystery made of fragments, a song half remembered, a shawl smelling faintly of lavender, a feverish voice whispering that Ravensmere had stolen more than a name. Now here, at a table of enemies, someone said she had been loved. Dorian's voice was quiet. What happened? Lady Marceline looked toward the window, as if the past stood outside waiting. Serena came to Ravensmere as companion to your father's sister. She was clever. Too clever for this house. Your father admired her. Then he desired her. Then he resented her for refusing him. Isolde's fingers tightened around the locket. Dorian's expression darkened. My father pursued her. Lady Marceline gave a bitter smile. Your father pursued anything that made him feel powerful. Lady Octavia's voice sliced through. Marceline. The dowager turned. No, I kept your secrets long enough. Lady Octavia went pale with anger. Dorian looked between them. My secrets? Lady Marceline's voice shook. Sarita did not vanish because of your father alone. Lady Octavia stood again. Enough! This time her voice cracked. Lord Peregrine rose too. Mother. But Octavia was staring only at Lady Marceline. You made an oath, and it destroyed us, the dowager said. Dorian slowly stood. What oath? The answer never came. A servant burst into the dining room. Your Grace, Dorian turned sharply. What is it? The blue room, sir. There is smoke coming from under the door. Isolde's heart lurched. The blue room. Her mother's last message. Ravensmere knows. Find the blue room. Dorian was already moving. Isolde followed. Lady Octavia shouted, Dorian, wait! He did not. They crossed the hall at speed. Servants scattering before them. The west corridor grew colder as they approached. The blue room stood at the end, sealed behind double doors, painted a faded shade of deep blue. Smoke curled beneath the threshold. Dorian seized the handle. Locked. Key, he demanded. The footman shook his head. No one has it, Your Grace. Dorian stepped back, then kicked the door hard enough to crack the frame again. The door burst inward. Smoke spilled out. But there was no fire. Only a small brazier near the hearth, burning papers. Isolde ran forward. Dorian grabbed a rug and smothered the flames. Together, they pulled half-burned pages from the ashes. Most were gone, but one remained readable, a page from a journal. Isolde lifted it with shaking hands. The writing was elegant. Female, I cannot remain silent. The child is not Lord Ravensmere's. The child is not shame. The child is proof. If anything happens to Sarita, the truth is hidden where Marceline will never look, beneath the angel with the broken wing. Isolde read the line again. The child. What child? She whispered. Dorian's face was grim. Lady Marceline appeared in the doorway behind them, breathless. When she saw the page, she covered her mouth. Dorian turned to her. Mother. She shook her head. Do not ask me. I am asking. Please, who was the child? Lady Octavia entered then, slowly. Her face had regained its calm, but it was the calm of a woman holding a knife behind her back. The child died, she said. Isolde turned. What child? Lady Octavia looked at her with hatred no longer hidden. You. The room stopped. Isolde stared at her. What? Octavia smiled faintly. That is what we were told. That Serena's daughter died. That the matter was buried. That Ravensmere could breathe again. Lady Marceline whispered, Octavia, stop! But Octavia's eyes gleamed. Oh, let us have truth, since everyone is so hungry for it. Serena Whitlock did not merely vanish. She fled because she had a child who could ruin this family. Isolde could barely breathe. Dorian's voice was low. Why would her child ruin us? Lady Octavia looked at him. Because Serena was secretly married. The words struck like thunder. Isolde stepped back. Dorian went still. To whom? He asked. Lady Octavia's smile widened. To your father's elder brother. Lady Marceline sobbed once. Dorian's face drained of colour. His father's elder brother, the firstborn son. The rightful heir before he died young in a riding accident. Lord Alaric Vane. If Serena had married Lord Alaric, if Isolde was their child, then Isolde was not a maid, not a nobody, not a scandal. She was blood of the main line. Possibly the true heir to Ravensmere fortune through her father's claim. Dorian looked at Isolde as the truth rearranged everything between them. Lady Octavia's voice turned poisonous. Now do you see, nephew? You did not claim a wife. You invited a rival. Isolde's knees nearly failed. Dorian reached for her, but she stepped away. No, she whispered. My mother would have told me. Perhaps she feared you would come here, Octavia said. And look what happened when you did. Dorian turned on his aunt. Where is the proof? Lady Octavia laughed. Burned, I imagine. Isolde looked at the ash. Too late, again, too late. Then Lady Marceline spoke. No, everyone turned. The dowager's face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady now. Not burned. Octavia stared at her. Marceline. Lady Marceline ignored her. She looked at Isolde. Your mother gave me something before she fled. I was too afraid to use it. Too afraid to destroy this family. Too afraid to save her. Where is it? Dorian asked. The dowager whispered. In the chapel. Isolde remembered the burned journal. Beneath the angel with the broken wing. Dorian moved first. But Lady Octavia was faster than grief. She grabbed a candle from the wall and hurled it into the long blue curtains. Flame climbed instantly. Servants screamed. Smoke exploded upward. In the chaos, Octavia seized Isolde's wrist and dragged her toward the side door. Dorian shouted her name. Isolde struggled. Octavia's nails dug into her skin. You should have stayed dead, Octavia hissed. Then the smoke swallowed them both. And by the time Dorian reached the corridor, Isolde was gone. The whole house became a hunting ground. Dorian searched the west corridor first, then the old servants' stairs, then the courtyard, the stables, the abandoned laundry rooms, the storage cellars beneath the kitchens. Nothing. No Isolde. No Octavia. Only one torn piece of pale green silk caught on a rusted hinge near the chapel passage. Dorian held it in his fist like evidence from a murder. The household had descended into panic. Servants carried buckets toward the blue room. Footmen shouted orders they had no authority to give. Lady Marceline sat in the entrance hall, shaking so badly, Mrs. Grafton had wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. But Dorian had never been calmer. That frightened people most. He did not rage. He did not shout. His face emptied of everything except purpose. Lord Peregrine approached him near the chapel door. Dorian. The Duke turned. Peregrine lifted both hands. I did not know she would take the girl. Dorian stepped closer. Where is your mother? I do not know. Then guess. Peregrine swallowed. For the first time, the charming mask slipped completely. Beneath it was not cruelty, it was fear. There are old tunnels beneath the chapel. My mother used them when she wished to come and go unseen. How do you know? Because as a boy I followed her. Dorian's eyes narrowed. And you never thought to mention this? I thought she used them for affairs, not murder. Dorian seized him by the collar and slammed him against the stone wall. Think carefully before you speak again. Peregrine's voice shook. There is an entrance behind the crypt angel. The crypt angel, the broken wing. Dorian released him and rushed into the chapel. The Ravensmere Chapel had been built 3 centuries earlier, all white stone, cold marble and coloured glass. Morning light broke through the windows in red and blue shards, painting the floor like spilled jewels. At the far end stood the memorial angel. One wing whole, one wing broken. Dorian pushed at the base. Nothing. He searched the carved stone, running his hands over names of dead fiends. Then he saw it. A tiny black mark beneath the angel's broken wing. Not dirt, a keyhole. Mother, he called. Lady Marceline appeared at the chapel entrance, supported by Mrs. Grafton. The key, Dorian said. She looked at the angel, her face twisted with old guilt. I threw it into the lake years ago. Dorian cursed under his breath. Then Mrs. Grafton stepped forward. No, Your Grace. Everyone looked at her. The housekeeper reached into the ring of keys at her waist and removed a small blackened key. Her late ladyship ordered me to keep it. She said one day courage might return to this house. Lady Marceline covered her mouth. Dorian took the key. "For once," he said, voice rough. "Someone obeyed the right woman." The key turned. Stone shifted. A hidden door opened beneath the angel. Cold air rose from below. Dorian took a lantern and descended. The passage was narrow and damp. Roots had cracked the stone. Water dripped somewhere in the dark. The tunnel curved beneath the chapel, then sloped downward toward the cliffs. Halfway through, he heard voices. Octavia's first. "You have no idea what you are." Then Isolde's. "I know exactly what I am. I am the daughter of the woman you failed to bury." Dorian moved faster. The tunnel opened into an old smuggler's chamber cut into the cliffside. A narrow window showed the sea crashing below. Isolde stood near the wall, wrists bound with torn curtain cord. Lady Octavia held a pistol. Dorian stopped. His blood went cold. Octavia turned. The devoted husband arrives." Dorian lifted the lantern slowly. "Let her go." Still pretending. "No." Octavia tilted her head. "Then what is she now? Wife? Maid? Cousin? Threat?" Dorian looked at Isolde. Her face was bruised from the struggle, her borrowed gown torn, her hair falling from its pins, but her eyes were fierce, alive, unbroken. He looked back at his aunt. "She is under my protection," Octavia laughed. "Protection? Your protection is a curse. Everyone you protect becomes a target." "Perhaps," Dorian said. "But everyone you fear seems to survive long enough to expose you." Her smile disappeared. Isolde spoke quickly. "Dorian, the proof is here." Octavia snapped the pistol toward her. "Quiet!" Dorian's hand tightened around the lantern. "What proof?" Isolde nodded toward a stone niche behind Octavia. "There." Octavia's expression changed. That was all the confirmation he needed. Dorian stepped left. Octavia raised the pistol. "Another step, and I shoot her." He stopped. For a moment, only the sea spoke. Then Lady Octavia began to unravel. "You think I am the villain because I refuse to let this family be destroyed by one woman's mistake." Isolde's voice shook with anger. "My mother's marriage was not a mistake. It was a disaster," Octavia hissed. "Alaric Vane was heir to Ravensmere. He could have married a duke's daughter, strengthened our line, secured our future. Instead, he married a companion with no fortune, no rank, no usefulness." Dorian's voice was cold. "So you killed him?" Octavia's eyes flashed. "No. I saved Ravensmere from his weakness." Isolde stared at her. "You caused the riding accident." Octavia's silence answered. Dorian's face hardened with disgust. His uncle Alaric had not died by misfortune. He had been removed by his own sister. Octavia lifted her chin. "Alaric was going to announce the marriage. Your father would have lost influence. Marceline would have been humiliated. The entire succession would have become a battlefield." "So you made it one anyway," Dorian said. "I preserved order. You murdered your brother. I chose the family." "No," Isolde said. "You chose power." Octavia swung toward her. In that instant, Dorian moved. He hurled the lantern. It struck the wall beside Octavia, shattering glass and spilling flame across the damp floor. She cried out, startled, turned away for one precious second. Dorian lunged. The pistol fired. The shot exploded through the chamber. Stone burst near his shoulder. Isolde screamed his name. Dorian slammed into Octavia, knocking the weapon from her hand. It skidded across the floor toward the cliff window. Octavia clawed at his face, furious, wild, no longer elegant. "You fool, she will take everything!" Dorian forced her arms down. "She already has." Octavia froze. He looked toward Isolde. "She has taken the lies out of this house." Isolde's eyes filled. Footsteps thundered in the tunnel. Peregrine appeared with 2 footmen behind him. His face went white when he saw his mother restrained. "Mother!" Octavia turned to him. "Help me!" Peregrine did not move. "Help me!" she commanded. He looked at Isolde, then at Dorian. then back at the woman who had taught him charm, silence, and cowardice. "No," he said. The word broke her more than force could have. Dorian handed Octavia to the footman. "Take her upstairs, lock her in the east study, send for the magistrate." Peregrine stepped aside. His mother spat at him as she passed. "You are weak." He looked down. "No, just late." When they were gone, Dorian crossed to Isolde and cut the cords from her wrists. Her hands trembled once freed. He noticed, but did not mention it. "Are you hurt?" "I will decide later." Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then he turned toward the stony's niche. Inside was a small iron box, old, rusted, sealed with the vine crest. Dorian carried it upstairs to the chapel, where Lady Marceline waited beneath the broken angel. When she saw the box, she began to weep. "I should have opened it years ago." Isolde stood before her. "Why didn't you?" The dowager looked at her with all the sorrow of a wasted life. "Because if I opened it, I would have to admit what I allowed. Serena came to me after Alaric died. She was carrying you. She had the marriage papers. She begged me to protect her. I promised I would." Her voice broke. "Then Octavia convinced me that protecting Ravensmere meant hiding her. I told myself I was saving you both by sending her away quietly, but I was saving myself from scandal." Isolde's anger trembled beneath her skin. "My mother died poor. I know. She died afraid. I know. She died thinking no one in this house cared." Lady Marceline bowed her head. "No apology can answer that." "No," Isolde said. "It cannot." Dorian opened the iron box. Inside lay three things. A marriage certificate between Lord Alaric Veen and Serena Whitlock, a baptism record for their daughter, Isolde de Veen, and a letter addressed to the child. Isolde's hands shook as she took it. The writing was her mother's. "My dearest Isolde, if you are reading this, then truth has outlived fear. Remember this. You were born loved, not hidden because you were shameful, but hidden because evil people feared what your existence proved. Do not let them make you small. You are not a servant of Ravensmere. You are its blood, its memory, and its reckoning." Isolde pressed the letter to her chest. For years, she had imagined the truth would give her peace. It did not. Not at first. It gave her grief with a name. But sometimes a named grief is the beginning of healing. The magistrate arrived before noon. Lady Octavia denied everything until Mr. Peregrine Vale, pale but steady, gave testimony about the tunnels, the burned papers, and years of hidden instructions carried out under his mother's seal. Mrs. Grafton testified about Serena's final days at Ravensmere. Lady Marceline confessed her silence. By evening, Octavia was taken away in a closed carriage. Not screaming now, only staring through the window with the bitter disbelief of a woman who had controlled every room she entered, only to be defeated by the girl she thought beneath notice. But one problem remained: the lie. The household gathered again in the great hall, this time not in scandal, in judgment. Dorian stood on the staircase, Isolde beside him. The same servants who had seen her accused now watched her in silence. Lady Marceline stood below, older than she had seemed that morning. Lord Peregrine remained near the door, uncertain whether he had any place left in the family he had helped wound. Dorian addressed them all. "This morning I told you Miss Fenwick was my wife." A murmur moved through the hall. Isolde looked straight ahead. Dorian continued. "That was not true." The words landed heavily. "I said it to prevent an innocent woman from being destroyed by a scandal as arranged to silence her." He looked at Isolde. "But a lie used for protection is still a lie." The hall quieted. "Her name is not Isolde Fenwick. She is Isolde Vane, daughter of Lord Alaric Vane and Serena Whitlock. She entered this house as a maid because this family failed her before she was born." Lady Marceline began to cry silently. Dorian's voice lowered. From this day forward, she will be treated not as a servant, not as a scandal, not as an intruder, but as family. Isolde turned to him. There was something in his voice that surprised her. Not duty, not strategy, respect. Then Mrs. Grafton stepped forward. The old housekeeper curtsied deeply. "Welcome home, Miss Vine." One by one, the servants followed, some out of obedience, some out of shame, some with real warmth. Isolde stood still, unable to speak. She had come to Ravensmere expecting enemies. She had found them, but she had also found witnesses. And perhaps, in time, a place. That night, long after the magistrate had gone, and the household had finally fallen quiet, Isolde found Dorian in the library. He stood beside the fire, holding the false marriage announcement his aunt had already tried to send to London. He threw it into the flames. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Only one." He glanced at her. She folded her arms. "You declared me your wife in front of half the county. I was improvising. You are very bad at improvising. It saved you. It ruined me differently." He absorbed that. No defence, no arrogance, just silence. Then he said, "You are right. That surprised her more than the lie had." Dorian Vane did not look like a man accustomed to admitting fault. He turned fully toward her. "I took control of your name because others were trying to destroy it. But it was still your name, your life, your choice. I had no right." Isolde looked at him for a long moment. The firelight softened the hard lines of his face. He was not the villain she had expected, not the hero either. Something more complicated. A man raised in a house of secrets, trying to become different before it was too late. "My mother said Ravensmere knows," she said quietly. "It did." "No," Isolde said. "Houses do not know. People know. And people choose silence." Dorian nodded. "Yes, will you?" "No." She believed him. Not completely, not easily, but enough for that night. He walked to the desk and picked up a folded document. "What is that?" "A statement. For London. It corrects the lie." She took it. There, in his bold handwriting, he had written the truth plainly. "Miss Isolde Vine, wrongfully hidden from her family, has been restored to Ravensmere under my protection and acknowledgement. No wife, no scandal, no ownership, only truth." Isolde looked up. "You wrote this already?" "Yes, before knowing whether I forgave you. I do not require forgiveness to do what is right." Her expression softened. "That is the first intelligent thing you have said." His mouth twitched. "I shall try not to ruin the moment." She almost smiled. Almost. Then the clock struck midnight. Both of them looked toward the sound. So much had changed since dawn. That morning she had been a maid accused in a duke's bedchamber. By midnight she was the hidden daughter of Ravensmere, the woman a murderer had feared, the truth that survived fire, tunnels, silence, and shame. Dorian spoke quietly. "What will you do now?" Isolde looked around the library, at the books she had dusted, the portraits she had avoided, the house that had taken her mother's happiness and nearly taken her own. Then she looked back at him. "I will stay." Something like relief crossed his face. "But not as your wife," she added. His eyes warmed. "No, and not as your maid. Never again." She lifted her chin. "I will stay as myself." Dorian bowed his head. "As you should." Outside, rain began again, soft against the windows. But inside Ravensmere House, the old silence had broken. And in the days that followed, society feasted on the scandal. They whispered that the Duke of Ravensmere had claimed a maid as his wife. Then they whispered that she was not a maid at all. Then they whispered that perhaps the Duke had known from the beginning. But the truth was stranger. He had not known. He had simply chosen, in one dangerous moment, to stand between a woman and the wolves. And that choice had uncovered a crime buried for 20 years. As for Isolde, she walked through Ravensmere, no longer with lowered eyes, but with the calm of a woman who had entered through the servant's door and forced the whole house to open its front gates. The blue room was restored. The angel in the chapel was heard, though Isolde insisted the broken wing remain visible. "Why?" Dorian asked. She answered, "Because broken things can still guard the truth." Lady Marceline spent many afternoons writing letters she had been too cowardly to send years before. Peregrine left for the continent, not to escape disgrace, he claimed, but to learn who he might become without his mother's voice in his ear. And Dorian? He changed slowly, not into a softer man, but into a truer one. He listened more, commanded less. And whenever someone in society dared mention the scandalous scam the maid in his bedchamber, he would answer calmly, "You remember it incorrectly." Then he would look toward Isolde, across the room, where she stood beneath chandeliers that once would have been denied her. She was never merely a maid, and those who were wise knew not to ask more, because Ravensmere had already given its answer. A woman had been caught in the Duke's bedchamber. The world called it disgrace. The Duke called her his wife, but the truth called her home.